Hi, my name is Alejandro Pérez Pérez, and this is the AI Coffee Podcast. Every week, we will have one episode regarding one disruptive aspect of technologies for the time to drink a cup of coffee. Today we have Alfredo Serrano, who is a really interesting person. You might see more about him later. But just to present him a little bit before he starts talking, he did a bachelor degree of business administration and big data and data analytics in Suffolk University and Lindenwood University in the United States. And then he has a lot of experience regarding data science project. Now he is working for Management Solutions in Boston. And he is also author of Data for Everyone newsletter and co-host of the Analytics Experience. Thank you very much for being here, Alfredo. Welcome to the AI Coffee Podcast. So before all, I would like to confess that we have met you to LinkedIn because I don't remember exactly who wrote first. I think it was me, I don't know. But you will tell me later. But I think that we reacted one to the other post or something. And we discovered that we have really similar content in our podcast and our newsletters. So it feels really natural for me to start talking. And then we met in Madrid last month. So is it something normal that happens to you to meet people in LinkedIn?
Hi, Alejandro, and thanks so much for introducing me. I appreciate it. I really like being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. That's a really good question. I'd say in the last year, I had a lot of people actually come to me and send me a DM through LinkedIn or an email and asking can we meet? I'm interested on learning this science, or hey, I love what you're doing with podcasts, or maybe help with the resume or whatever it is. So I'd say that in the beginning, it was a bit weird, especially because I was not used to this type of stuff happening to me. But now I've gotten more used to it, and I just see it as another way of helping some people. So it's cool.
Yeah, actually, people around me are not used to react through LinkedIn. They don't use LinkedIn so much. I don't know if that's your case. They are more maybe on Instagram or TikTok. But I guess that for corporate world, for working experiences like that, it is a really a good opportunity to discover new people, to discover new trends. So thank you, LinkedIn, for creating this kind of relationships. And also, one thing I want to confess before we start talking more about data science and your experience is that you surprised me very much because of your age. You have your ideas really clear. When we were talking that you really know what you want to do in your present and your future, your career path is really clear. And wow, it surprised me really much. And I wanted to know if that's common for you and people around you. What do you think about that? Do you see that people around you also have these clear ideas? And maybe you can say to the audience your age, maybe if you want to, just to show that you are really young.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your kind words, Alejandro. So for everyone here, my age is 22. Mine I look 22. I had that before. And that question is a bit tricky actually, because I've been very lucky. I've been in the US since I was 18. So I've been almost here for 5 years now. And the mentality is completely different from Spain or European countries. People, once you go through college, they have a general idea of what they want to do, what they don't want to do, for sure. I'd say that I'm very lucky that I've surrounded myself with people I also have a podcast, in case you guys don't know, and I have a co-host, Alejandro mentioned, and we really think alike, but there's not many people who are on a clear path of knowing, I want to focus on XYZ. I know that my future regarding my career path should be looking like this. And again, everything's, nothing's set on stuff, right? Right now, this is the path for me because I find it interesting. I like it. And I really enjoy data science, and I really enjoy, creating content for people to learn. But again, nothing's set of stone. Right now, I have things clear, but I cannot tell you what's going to happen in a year or two.
That's really honest, because I think all of us every day rethinking about what do we want to do next day and the next step, because things are changing really quickly. And that's really natural to every day trying to reevaluate everything. Yes, that's totally fair. But anyway, you have your ideas really clear. Usually people at your age in Madrid are finishing their bachelor degree or their studies. And actually, I remember, for example, myself, I'm not so much older than you. I'm 27, 28 by the time this podcast is going to be published. But I mean, I remember myself that at that age, I was a little bit lost because it feels like really hard, the process of changing between college and then going to the professional world. And you have everything clear. You actually have a lot of experience and you create the podcast. You are trying to create a community around you. So, wow, it feels really amazing, and congratulations for that. So,
Okay.
So the first question I have in mind for asking you is, what defines for you a data scientist?
All right, that's actually a really good question. I feel like nowadays, unfortunately, that's like a very broad term because the data scientist definition has changed a lot around the years. Like in my case, I'm a junior data scientist for the company I work on, but then it's consulting. I'm like a data science consultant, so everything changes a lot. I feel like I cannot give you a clear definition, but I can give you some things or requirements, you would say, that have to be there for you to become a data scientist or be in the position of be a data scientist for a company. The first one, I'll say you need to have a great background when it comes to math, especially like when it comes to statistics, because believe it or not, in data science, most of the things that you're doing are related to the math, programming, algorithm creation, and data structures. So math background is important. Obviously, the software development part, there's so much clickbait on how many programming languages you need and how many learning tools you need for you to like become a successful data scientist. And I don't think that's a clear path. I think that you definitely need to know either Python or R, some sort of programming language that is versatile and you can use for different things like analysis, machine learning, and data structures. Again, you wouldn't need SQL. Because you guys don't know, it's a structured query language. Is the programming language that databases are built on. That's what you use to create information, destroy information, query information to extract it and analyze it posteriorly. And then I would say some sort of visualization tool. Nowadays you have Power BI, which is the Microsoft Suite package. You have QuickView, you have Tableau. So I'd say that a good data scientist overall is someone that approaches problems on a logical way and makes use of the tools that he has when it comes to statistics and math, software development, or the programming side of things, and some sort of visualizations and oral communication. Because at the end of the day, gaining insight, customer or the stakeholder to take the final decision or maybe like reconsider things, right? So I think that would be some sort of definition. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's the best I can come up with at the moment.
Yeah, that's true that it's a mix of many things. Actually, I remember that I had one teacher that told me that it's a mix of art, engineering, and math. Yes, and I guess that it's something similar to that because, as you said, it mixes a lot of different things. It comes from math, of course, and programming skills, but yes, this part of also going to the customer, trying to figure out what they want to create, what do they want to understand by the data, it's really important as well. And also something really common that you usually say in your podcast that I think it's really, really interesting and I invite people to listen to it. But something really important that you usually mention is that when people are starting in this field of data science, they don't really need to go directly to R or SQL or maybe Python because they are maybe difficult to go in directly if you haven't ever done something similar. But maybe Excel, it's already a good starter because using it correctly with all of the functions and everything is already quite a lot. And usually we have the feeling that Excel is maybe a waste of time or something really simple, and maybe it's not. So it's great also what you usually say in your podcast. So maybe if you want to react about that, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that's a great thought. And you know what's crazy? Like, especially, I don't know why there's so much like hate on Excel. Like 80% of the companies nowadays are built in Excel. Most financial companies have all their records, and God forgive me, they don't have databases. They have Excel sheets, which might not be the best practice. But again, as you said, Excel is such a great tool and it's so user-friendly for everyone to learn. That's what we coach everyone on the Alex Experience community get. You know what? First thing that you should do is you have a couple of cells. What do you want to do with it? You have so many opportunities with formulas. You have data visualization. You have regression. You have, you have also macros. If you go to the VBA part of it and you actually you see there's a programming language behind Excel, your mind explodes. Like if you really know how to use it, it's crazy. And even on my day basis, most of the work that I do is either I'm programming on R, I'm programming on Python, or I'm using SQL integrated on one of those. And on the side, I always have Excel open because if I have to open like a CSV document that I have to analyze and I want to have it in there and I'm a pivot table or a pivot chart, like stuff like that, it's really user friendly. And I think that people either have it like a bit of fear because they've never done anything related to this, or they have like a very weird misunderstanding of what this tool is and what this tool can bring you as professional, which is sometimes sad because it has a great potential.
Yes, totally. So what would you suggest to a person that is starting in this field?
Actually, that's a really good question. So the first thing that I would say is you want to start somewhere, right? You want to start with somewhat that it's easy for you. So I would try to combine going through some basic stat courses so that you have some understanding of basic stats, differential math, probability too is very useful. And combining that at the same time with the starting Excel, like gaining mastery of controls might sound stupid, but once you understand that you don't need a mouse to have Excel, It becomes really funny and it becomes really entertaining. Once you're done with that, I suggest that go through SQL. Literally, like SQL is the language of the databases, language of querying information and analyzing information done correctly. And after that, maybe you're actually ready to go into the big leagues. Go and like play with Python, play with R, and on the meantime, trying to figure out, well, what can I do to like gain some visualization insights. It is not a climb path. Talking from experience, when I started, I was like a 16-year-old and I was just being bombarded by like clickbait. And I was like, oh, you need to like learn 17 different languages and you need to also learn this type of algorithms and you need to like do this type of math. Like, hold on, it is difficult. But if you have like a roadmap and you define yourself the easy way for everyone, there's no answer. What works for you? I don't know your background. What's your background like before you started doing anything like related to data science?
In my case, I studied a physics bachelor degree and I started to learn. The first one was Python directly. So I maybe not the best example because, in science, there are a lot of Python and programming for doing research. And then by doing that, I realized that it was something that interests me a lot. So I was a little bit more specialized on this part of computational research. And I also did a doctorate. I joined a team in Barcelona for research in nanoscience for health.
That is so cool.
Yes, it is. Actually, if they're listening this, I was really great and I was really learning how to modelize some research they have done regarding this field of, a really bioscience field of research. But I was there to helping them to modelize the results with Python, actually. And I realized that it was really something useful. So then after that, I learned R. Actually, I am saying this at the Spanish way of saying. So how do you say it correctly in like United States English? SQL.
You can do either SQL or SQL.
SQL. Yes. So, I started to learn that and then I joined Click. So that's where I was learning ClickSense and ClickView much. And now I'm working with this. So, that's true what you say, that the most important thing is not to try to learn everything at the same time because it's a waste of time. Firstly, because actually for me, the best would be to learn something really a lot. And then when you learn more and more, you discover that many things are really similar. The logic is more or less the same and only a couple of different things of syntax change. So it's great. Actually, I also learned C, for example, a lot in university. But, for example, C, I haven't never used it anymore, but still it's something I have on my mind. And if in the future, for example, I need to use it, I know that at the beginning it will be hard to redo some things, but everything works more or less the same. And for loop is the same more or less in all the languages. And they are more or less the same things. They change a little bit and, Google works really well to find these differences.
Absolutely. Or ChatGPT,
Yes, or ChatGPT, exactly. Actually, one question I had by the end, but maybe if you have said something, how do you think that these things, these generative tools such as ChatGPT or DALI or something like that will maybe change the way we work?
I feel like that's a really tricky question. The way I see technology in general is like, it's a double-edged sword. I think that technology is progress. I believe we had this conversation back in Madrid when we met. Technology equals progress. Always. But at the same time, I think that it's also, you have to be mindful that there's going to be always a lot of people who are reticent of like technology and what it means and the change it brings. Like, go to the Industrial Revolution when fabrics and factories were being created and there was a lot of advancement, there were other people who were trying to actually part them down, which I feel like it's happening right now. There's a lot of people, especially us involved in tech, well, like, actually, we should, like, embrace this. Like, let's implement it as much as we can. Meanwhile, there's people like, oh, AI is going to destroy everything. Oh, AI is going to, like, disrupt the way we work in a bad sense. There's going to, like, be a lot of people who lose their jobs to AI. And I found this quote the other day, and it's so true. You're never going to lose your job to AI. Trust me, I also work with AI. You'd be surprised. We're not that advanced yet as people think we are. If you ever get to lose your job, it's because someone who knows how to use AI is going to replace you. The way I think it's going to happen is, like, yesterday I was writing a SQL query, right? Couldn't find it in Stack Overflow. I also use Stack Overflow, like 99% of the programmers in the world, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to ChatGPT. Maybe I can find a way to, like, figure out and get a prompt, whatever. I do it in ChatGPT. And being honest with you, the answer was quite good. It wasn't perfect because the thing with, as you said, in programming, it's a lot of creativity and your logical reasoning and your thought processes is involved on it. So it wasn't optimal. But the code was there. And the answer to my question was there, which means, all right, ChatGPT provided the code, the base code. But in my mind, I knew the answer to what I needed. And I had already like a roadmap of, all right, this code, I'm going to integrate it onto it was a Microsoft SQL Server database that I was working on. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this, XYZ. I'm going to optimize this a bit. I need to do a SOAP query, blah, blah. Then I'm going to do a CTE, blah, blah, blah. But if you think about it, the process involves already AI to have that main like answer, right? What if we can apply it to everything else? Don't you think everything's going to become like more efficient? Maybe that would have been a problem that I would have spent like 2 hours doing because I couldn't find it on Google. I couldn't find it on Stack Overflow. And I was running out of ideas. Trust me, I was trying to figure out myself and I was running out of ideas. And in 5 minutes, I had it. So progress is going to be there.
Yes, it helps really much. But I had a conversation about that with a friend a couple of days ago. And she told me that what about the authority of this, in this case, for example, this program or this script? Is it going to be yours? Is it going to be from Microsoft, OpenAI, or Google if at the end they create something similar? So I totally agree with you from, let's say, practical perspective. It will provide us an opportunity to create more things quicker. And I think that's a really great thing, that we are going to do more things in less time with less efforts. Or even, as you said, sometimes if you have a blocker or something, you don't have an idea, it can create something to start already something, I mean, of course, it's not going to be, let's say, the final solution, the end of everything, at least for the moment, but maybe it can create a script that will be a draft for you to continue later. So it's really powerful. But is it going to be you who have done the script in this case, or like a mix of an AI and you? I mean, at the end of the day, it will create some controversial questions like that. And for example, in research, for example, I have already seen a couple of papers co-written with ChatGPT, for example, or peer-reviewed by ChatGPT. And wow, it creates something, it's going to be like something really strange in the future, right?
I agree with you. I mean, unfortunately, like I don't have any background of all research. I'm not a research guy, if I'm honest with you. So I cannot speak when it comes to legal part and, ownership on that. I have no clue about that. What I can say is, from programmer's part, I feel like everyone has you this snippet from code from other people or Stack Overflow. Because I think that the great thing that we have, programmer's point of view, or the software development or data science point of view, is that there's a huge community. You have places like Reddit, you have places like Slack, you have places like Stack Overflow that are literally people solving your problems for you. So from an ownership point of view, I'm not worried. If I'm fully honest with you, I was at work yesterday. My boss came in and I was like ChatGPT did it in 5 minutes, and then I did a CT and I did a support, but like he did the base code, and like my boss was like, wow, this is gonna be like amazing in a couple of years. It depends on how you want to see it. Again, on the ownership side of things, I can tell you on the data community, I don't think people really care about that. Even when you're commenting code, even when you're sharing code and you're like following someone else's steps, people really don't care. Just you want to get the results and you want to get the end of the process. It's not that big of a deal.
Yes, I agree with you because I'm also part of this world. And for me, it's also your mindset. I have the same mindset of you, that if we are able to create this solution quicker, and also we have done something similar with the community in the past. And also, this collaboration is also working usually in our works. But there are some people around us when we are working. So, for example, these legal teams also, even, for example, imagine if you're working for a startup, you create something new. Is this product part of this startup? The owner is the startup? I mean, maybe in the future, we are going to have these controversial questions. I know that they are not the subject of this episode, but still, it's something that it will change the way we work. I am totally sure. It will be something also interesting to know how in the future us or other people are going to deal with this, because it's something really new, and until this moment it was even impossible to think about that. So wow, amazing how everything is going to work in the future, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but now I just think of something. Let me tell you something. I assume that over your years of experience, you've done a lot of work on Python, right? You've written many scripts. Does that mean that all the work that you've done, like remains on Anaconda, is that property of Anaconda? I don't know if Anaconda, but this is the group that has like Jupyter and everything. Does that belong to them? Your question, right?
It's a good question, actually. Yeah. But I'm thinking that, for example, these AIs that has all the knowledge of the world, for example, in the future, they are going to work better than us.
You really think so?
I am totally sure, because at this moment, they are less intelligent than us, let's say. And they are not going to provide data, scripts, and things like that as good as we are doing now. But in the future, I'm sure that this is going to be like that. So maybe our point as humans would be to try to use them as tools to do prompts, as you said, that are correct, and also to extract information from the data and try to be in this part of analyze and these creative solutions that we need to create. Because I think that's what made us humans, and not really creating code. And I think that in the future, in a really short term, we are going to code much less, even though we need to know how code is working, of course, but it still is like code is not going to be the basis of our work anymore. I think that way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something different changed in the future. I don't know. But also by the way that, for example, no-code solutions are appearing and no-code platforms, I imagine that they are going to be needed less and less in the future.
I agree with your perspective. The way I see things to it, like if you refer to a role, in specific like a data analyst or a data engineer or data scientist, I think they are very subjective. People might not believe this, but trust me, they're very subjective roles. As you said, involves a lot of creativity. Yes, you're doing the math part. Yes, you're doing the engineering part when it comes to doing the algorithm. And then you actually have to code everything. And then you have the model, and the model works, and then you implement the solution. But at the same time, from my point of view, who's going to make that last decision? Who's going to take that, like, that last point of saying, all right, ChatGPT gave me a prompt to actually, do the ETL process of a database that is connected to my revenue streams on the bank or whatever. Okay, but you know what? But we also have a different system who's been working for like 50 years, and we might not be as comfortable working with this new solution because it's new to us. Who's gonna make the last decision? Human beings. So I think that the whole point of this conversation is, I think we both have a point. Whether we like it or not, this is gonna be integrated into our lives. The sooner we get accustomed to this, the sooner we get to implement this and learn how to use them properly, the better. What I'm not gonna be able to do is in like a year, be like, oh, what is ChatGPT? Because there's gonna be ChatGPT 4, 5, 6, and whatever. And the neural network that they have already, just amazing. What they've established is going to keep evolving, as you were saying. So I'd say that still the subjective part and the human part is going to be indispensable. It's just that the tools are going to change. Like 20, 30 years ago, Python was primitive. Python was like, actually you mentioned C, and C is, in my opinion, C is still very primitive. It's a pain in the ass to work with, which I work with, and I don't like it. But I think that it's just going to be another tool, and that tool is going to keep evolving, and that tool is going to get implemented with it. Because if you think about it, Microsoft owns 49% of OpenAI. What if they introduced ChatGPT on Microsoft SQL Server or Azure, which are great tools that I've used on a daily basis? What if they implement that? I think that would be like a great marriage, like it's promise of AI that are actually helping you, and then you have like this tool to connect databases, extract information. So I think you can have the best of both worlds if you have the right mentality about it, which the companies obviously are going to make decisions based on money. Not everyone's interests, but I think that's the point.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it's going to be there even if we don't want to. So we need to understand how it works. And something that explodes in my mind is like, it's going to be even in an Excel file, maybe in a couple of years. Why not? So, I mean, if we have really like simple function as Zoom or something like that, but we are going to have even more complex with AI, then people won't even know what they are behind, as it happens already, with many. So yes, it's going to be there, of course, and we need to be prepared. Yeah, let's say as a conclusion. Yeah. I also wanted to talk in this conversation about your podcast and your newsletter and how they have affected your career. How do you see the idea of creating a personal brand in a career of data science? How do you see that?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great question. The way they see it, especially in the US, the US here, everyone's trying to get into tech. So LinkedIn, everyone's applying to jobs, and there's great people out there coding, doing machine learning, doing whatever it is. So I feel like when I got introduced to LinkedIn, I was one of those people who was like, oh, I'm going to get my resume there, blah, 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 and that's going to be it. As you mentioned before, now I use LinkedIn more than I use Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and everything else. Creating a personal brand right now, the way I see it has given me so many opportunities to connect with people like you, connect with people like, like Singh, which happens to be an author of a book about SQL. Data architect of the Boston Red Sox, which is such a cool thing. Like, I feel like if you know how to create a personal brand around yourself and what you can bring to others, I think it's a great trade-off. The way I see it is, not much for you. I don't care how many followers I have. I don't care how many people like my videos, my posts. I'm an international student that came here 4 years ago, and it's so difficult to land a job on this industry, especially right now, that I'm just trying to help other people to see that there's a way to do it. It's something that worked for me, and I'm just trying to share it. And in the meantime, I'm trying to make people learn and educate themselves on a topic that I feel like it's already integrated in society. Again, whether we like it or not, data is everywhere. Data is going to keep evolving. And like right now, we have more information that the computers that sent to the Apollo in the 60s. So what's going to be next, right? I think that the only way that we can keep evolving is like get into these themes, implement them into our lives, and integrate them onto our professional lives. And that's what I'm trying to do. The newsletter is fun background that I have. I do research on a topic and I like writing about it. If I feel like it, I'll write about it. If not, it is what it is. The podcast, we're very lucky, my partner and I, that we're both bilingual. We have the ability to communicate in Spanish and in English. And we thought, you know what? These topics in Latin America, at least like Spain, people don't really talk about them. Like there's people working on it, but the education system is much more different than the US. And we didn't feel like they had the best resources. So we came up with the idea of what if we could combine giving content to people that they can actually learn about on a quick way, which is what we're having like shorts and videos and stuff like that on our Instagram and TikTok. And then you have like this long interviews with people who are like top-notch personalities, you know, and people actually like get to learn about them. So I think it was a good trade-off, but the whole point of this is trying to help all the people.
Yes, I recommend people listening this to go to your newsletter and your podcast because it is really meaningful, actually. And I have learned a lot of things from these conversations, as you said. Actually, also in general, I think that this opportunity that we have now to create content, to discuss with people all around the world and to learn from others is a great opportunity that I recommend other people to do also. And I have learned a lot with your podcast, but with other podcasts as well of these conversations. And it creates a lot of value. And at this time, value is really important, I guess, because there are many people who know a lot of things, but value is the key factor of everything, I think. So yes, I recommend you to continue, of course, and I hope that you are going to create a really interesting second season of the podcast soon. So I'm really interested on that. And just to conclude, because we are finishing, our episodes here are a little bit shorter than yours. I have two questions just to conclude. The first one is, how do you like coffee? Because, the podcast name is the Coffee Podcast. So it's a really relevant topic here. And also, how may the audience contact you?
All right. First question, I did like cappuccino with a bit of vanilla. In the US, they do stuff like that. I know in Spain, they are not like that picky with coffee. And ways to contact me. I love LinkedIn. As I said, go follow me on LinkedIn. Alfredo Serrano, Figueroa. You can also contact me through email, which I'm assuming Alejandro's gonna give that to you guys. And I also recommend follow the analytics experience. Again, we have YouTube videos, we have TikTok now, Instagram with short content, and we have Spotify and YouTube, which is where we're actually like landing those big interviews with personalities. So follow us on those platforms. Again, Alejandro, thank you so much for your time and for having me. I had an amazing time with you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you a lot, Alfredo. I hope that for the audience, it was a really valuable conversation. And as I said, value is really important. So by creating this content, I guess that we both have learned something, and assume that, at least for me, it has been the case, and also that the audience have. So thank you very much, Alfredo, for being here, and see you.
Thank you, and hopefully see you soon for our next episode.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here one more week. If you liked it, please subscribe to the podcast and to the newsletter in alejandroperezperez.com. Please share both with your friends and relatives, and don't forget to give me 5 stars in Apple Podcast and Spotify. See you next week. Bye bye.